Okay, what we're going to do now is use our random numbers, and we're going to generate a Magic 8 Ball application. A Magic 8 Ball, it looks like this picture right here, like that. And basically what it does is was a toy that was generated in the 80s, I think in the 80s, oh, in the 1950s, there you go. So in the 1950s, and the idea was that this would help people to answer questions that were complex or that were difficult for them to decide. So it was only for answering yes/no questions, and what it would do is it would tell you answers based on a random answer. So here are the 20 answers that actually come from a Magic 8 Ball. So you might go, oh gee, I really don't want to go to soccer training this afternoon, and you'd go over and shake your Magic 8 Ball and say, should I go to soccer training today? And it would say, it is decidedly so, or it would give one of these answers randomly from the 8 Ball, and so it would be used for people who didn't want to make a decision in order to make a decision. So we're going to write an application that does that same type of principle. So we're going to need to generate a random number from 1 to 20, and then using that random number, what we will do is select one of these statements. Now you could do that with an if statement. So we've been looking at an if statement so far, and in an algorithm, so this is a flowchart for an if statement down the left hand side here, you can see what happens is the if statement becomes a yes/no answer, and if the answer is yes, then it does one process. If it's no, it does the other. So if only has two choices. That means that it's binary selection. Now because we've got 20 choices, an if statement could be used to solve this problem, but we need 20 different if statements. So if the number was equal to 1, then we'd write the first response and so on. An easier way to set that up is using in C# what's called a switch statement. Now in algorithms these are called multi-way selection, and the way that that works is that you come down in the flowchart, you have your decision, and you can see instead of just having a yes/no answer, there's a number of different options that can be used. And so that means that for something like a Magic 8 Ball, we can have 20 different options based on our random number, and for each one we could write a different statement. So this is the Microsoft help site, and you can see it's got the structure set up for a switch statement. So in this one they're creating a variable which is called case switch. In this example it's equal to 1, and so the switch statement is set up like this. It starts with the keyword switch, it has the variable name, the thing that will change straight after it, and then it just has a whole lot of possible cases. So if case switch is equal to 1, it's going to do this section of code here. If it's equal to 2, then it would do these statements. And right down the bottom here, the last option is what's default. If none of the cases match, then it does this statement. So that would work perfectly for our Magic 8 Ball. So let's jump into having a look at the code. So this is using a Magic 8 Ball with a switch statement and a random number generator. So start Visual Studio, go to New Project, and we're going to use once again a console application for C# for the Windows desktop, and I'm just going to call mine Magic 8 Ball, and that's a good name for you to use as well, and say OK. That will create for you, remember, a console application doesn't have any form design, we're just going to use the Windows console, and that will create for you the programming space. So then find your main method or your main procedure here, and between the open curly brackets and the closed curly brackets, press enter a couple of times so that we can start to write our commands. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is start to tell the user what this is. So I'm going to leave a couple of lines because later on I'm going to come back and add some variables above there. So let's go console.writeLine. Remember, you open the brackets, you open and close the quotes, and you finish each line with a semicolon. Then inside that quotes we're going to say welcome to the magic 8 ball application. Then on my second line, I'm going to ask them what their query is. What is your query? And finish that line with a semicolon. Then we're going to allow them to actually enter in the query. So we're going to read the line, and in fact I'm not going to even store it because I don't care what their query is. We're just going to respond in one of those 20 ways. We don't need to store their question. So at that point they might enter in, should I go outside, should I go and play, should I go to school today, whatever it is. Now we need to set up our variables and our switch statement. So let's jump back up to the top, and we're going to declare a variable which is called random number as an integer, and let's just set it equal to 0 just for convenience at the start. We also need to generate our random numbers. So let's say that we've got a random which is going to be called R, and that's a new random. It's equal to a new random. Okay, so that's going to create a a collection now of randoms. And then what we can do is say our random number is, actually we don't want to do that yet, let's do that later. So down here we want to actually now set a value for our random number. So our random number is going to be our r.next, and you'll remember from our first, you can set a minimum and a maximum. Our first application we talked about how you can, this line here creates a collection of randoms, and the r.next gets the next integer random number that's between 1 and 20. And so that's now given us a random number. Now we can set up our switch command. Remember that C# always gives you plenty of help, or Visual Studio always gives you plenty of help. So if you start writing switch and then you're unsure of the structure, you just write switch, then press tab twice, and you'll see it creates the structure for you. And the thing we're going to test is the random number, just like that. You can see here's our default case, so this is the thing we want to happen if no other case comes in. But we're going to have case number 1, put a colon, and in the case of case number 1, we want to write to the console write line, should have finished with a semicolon, and this is where I'm going to use copy and paste. You jump back to the magic 8 ball statements, and our first option is it's going to write it is certain, and we're going to paste that in there. Okay, so if the case is equal to 1, it's going to write it is certain, and then what you do is you finish that option off just by writing break. Then you can start your next case. So case, if it's equal to 2, and at this point what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply copy that line and paste it, and then change this text. So instead of it saying it is certain, I want it to say, as I see it, yes. We jump back to Visual Studio and paste it in. So I've got 2 yes statements at the moment. Now, once you're at this point, what you can do is actually copy that entire case 2 statement, paste it in, and this time edit it to make case 3, and then copy and paste that text to become the third option, which is the reply is hazy, try again. And we paste that in. Now for the to make this quicker for you, you would do this 20 times, okay, for each of the different 20 statements. But I'm going to just go straight to my 4th option. I'm going to paste don't count on it in as my one there. So if nothing else happens, I'm going to say don't count on it. So I've got case 1, case 2, case 3, and then a default case, which means I've only got 4 possible options. So I'm going to change, for me, the random number here to be between 1 and 4. don't you do that, because I want you to complete this for all four statements. For all 20 statements that are possible for the Magic 8 Ball. And so what we've got now is we've got our random being generated. We're asking for the query. We're waiting for them to enter their query. And then based on the random number that is generated, we're going to respond with either it is certain, as I see it, yes, reply is hazy, try again, or don't count on it. Then the final thing we want to do to make this a workable application is simply wait. So we're going to do a console dot readline, and that means our cursor is going to sit there after this application runs. So let's press start and see if it works. Welcome to the Magic 8 Ball application. What is my query? Should I stay at home today? And remember, this is where our random application runs. As I say, yes, there you go, I should have stayed home today. Okay, what I would like you to do to finish this application off is complete the 20 possible cases here. And then what I want you to do is see if you can actually make this a loop, so that instead of just happening once, you can see here when I press enter, my application's going to finish. If this was an application that was running, we'd want this to loop again and say, okay, what's your next question? What's your next query? So I'd like you to see if you can set up a loop that will make this application to keep asking what's their next query and responding with a random response each time. So give that a go and we'll see how you go.